So in the chat box, I have shared the link for today's attendance. So you go there and then fill up your names and other fields. Okay, so let us start with the last class. So in the last class, there was the sessional examination. That means last week's class. Okay. So there were 30 marks, question answers, all MCQs, and most of you did quite well. Well, in the sense, I should say it is a little bit above the average, and there were, of course, some outliers who did really nice, and then who actually couldn't perform at all. So let me start with a general question. So, did you find the questions very difficult or very easy in your own words? What was your opinion? Yes? Medium. Okay. I actually deliberately put across some technical questions related to the remote sensing part. So if you have understood the concept, then in that case you can quite well answer those questions. For example, there were some of the questions related to the resolutions, especially the radiometric resolution. And as I explained before, radiometric resolution is the fineness with the which you measure your data with. Okay? It is measured in terms of either if the image is a 2-bit image or 8-bit image, depending on that, you have the adjacent gray scales or the fineness of the scale with which you measure the data. Okay, so last week we had this exam, and yesterday I gave you an assignment. This was exactly to test your ability to search resources from the internet and then write down in your own words whatever you have understood regarding the topic. So the topic was the effect of climate change on the agricultural productivity, and especially it was in the study area of our northwestern region in Assam. Okay, so many of you have actually returned this um, assignment. I asked all of you to write down in MS Word, because in the process you will learn the software as well. But as you can see it on the screen, these are the ones who have actually responded. So there is Dharman Deuri, Juri, all of you have actually returned it today. So I haven't really found some time to go through all the assignments. But let me pick some of the assignments and discuss whatever observations that I have regarding the assignment that you have submitted. Okay, let us start with the sample that is given by Dharman Deuri. Dharman Deuri, are you here today? Are you here? Dharmendra Deuri, you are here?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So can you see the screen? So let us try to open up your presentation. and then we would like to see whatever observations everyone has, or whatever I have actually found. I would like to uh, tell you and all the class. Okay, so idea was that I wanted you to know how to search these kind of information in the internet, and then you write it as an academic piece of work. For that, I hope you have gone through Google Scholar and then read some of the papers which may have already been published. Or if I say the word climate, automatically there is the one authority on climate which is known as IPCC. So IPCC, Intergovernmental Planet on Climate Change. So IPCC, each year they have their reports and publications which are available on the internet. And then if you want to go through, or if you want to know about some of the effects of the climate that you want to know about a particular area, you should definitely go to the reports which have been published in IPCC. So, for example, uh, let me go and find the report on IPCC. Okay, so we have, first of all, for that we don't need Google Scholar. Normal Google search engine is enough. I type IPCC, then you see, IPCC stands for Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. So actually IPCC consists of a panel of members of the authority on subjects related to climate change and disaster management. So that means these papers and reports, whatever are being published by IPCC, these are verified and scrutinized, and then they have gone through an extensive review and peer review process before they really publish their reports. So who are these peer reviewers? These are the experts in the respective fields which who may be working in various universities, very good reputed universities across the globe, or there may be subject experts, researchers, or people who may be working in the field. So, talking about the reports, then if you want to know about the reports, you can click on the reports and then right click and then go to that page. Okay. So it says the IPCC prepares comprehensive assessment reports about knowledge on climate change, its causes, potential impacts, and response options. The IPCC also produces special reports, apart from the regular ones, which are an assessment on a specific issue and methodology report, which provides practical guidelines for the preparation of green gas inventories. Okay, so how to go for the reports? So assessment report 6, synthesis report. This is one report, you see. Then it says about the climate change 2022. So let us go and find, explore this report. All the reports are in PDF file, which is available for public. Okay. Okay, so it says the sixth assessment report is underway. That means it has still not been uploaded, but you can find this report here. So we can try to find some other reports. Okay. So one report may be on climate change 2021 impacts, adaptation, and vulnerability. So here also you can go and then try to download this particular report. So my question is, so when you prepared this literature review, did you take help of the IPCC report in some way or the other? Did you? Which kind of a document did you refer to? Hmm? Okay, so when I go to look into your report or your observations, you say climate means the weather prevailing in an area in general over a long period of time. Okay, so Mr. Deori, so this statement that you have made, this is by Dharmendra Deori. Where is Dharmendra? Dharmendra, are you there or you have left? Okay, anyway, whoever is here present. So when you put some statement like this, it has to be backed by some form of an evidence, or it should be backed by some proof. Since this is not your own statement, climate means weather prevailing in an area in general or over a long period of time. So you should refer this statement by the standard practice of reference. So in the assignment itself, I told you that whenever you have to refer some sort of a statement or line, you must stick on to the APA 6 format or edition style. So in this case, if this statement you have found by going through the IPCC document, there itself you should be referencing this one. Okay, so just a moment. Okay, so back into action. So the second statement says Assam is a state in northeastern India situated south of eastern Himalayas along the Brahmaputra Baraga River valleys. Okay, so when you make a statement like this, if you can you can support this with a small kind of a map showing where Assam actually is situated, that is actually very nice. So you can prepare maps using some of the existing GIS software, or you can directly copy paste from some source, but in that case you will have to really refer where uh, we have copied it from. So with an area of about this square mile, the state is bordered by Bhutan and Arunachal Pradesh to the north, Nagaland and Manipur to the east. So whatever these names are appearing, okay. So if you are mentioning about Bhutan, if you're mentioning about Arunachal Pradesh, if you're mentioning about Nagaland or Manipur or Meghalaya, whatever these names, those names should also be shown on the map. Is it clear? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Ah, okay. Then you were saying that climate change is a complex and interactive system consisting of the atmosphere, land surface, snow, ice, ocean, and other bodies and living bodies. Okay, so this is good observation that you have cited. But whenever you write a document like this, please be sure that you should not be directly copy pasting it from some source. Nowadays, it is very easy to track it. If you are preparing some kind of an academic document, please do not copy paste it directly from any source. That actually infringes the ethics or the good standard, and then it comes into something known as plagiarism. So directly you should not be copy pasting something or anything. You can rephrase the sentence and then you should be writing it whatever it has made a sense to you in your own words. Even when you do so, you should properly mention or refer the original source. Okay? Then coming to Assam, it says Assam is extremely vulnerable to climate change due to both its geographical proximity to the delta region and poor socio-economic conditions. So you see, your vulnerability is influenced by these two factors. One is the closeness to the delta region. So if you are mentioning about the delta region, definitely this delta is the Bay of Bengal or the Sundarban, and then the poor economic conditions. So one is your physical vulnerability, then the other one is our socio-economic vulnerability, our social vulnerability. So if these two things prevail, and then there is a possibility, or there is a high possibility that the climate change is going to influence the hazardous conditions to a maximum level, then these existing levels of vulnerability will push the entire population into a situation which is known as higher risk. Why? Because risk is ultimately, as we have discussed, is hazard multiplied by vulnerability. So in technical terms, risk is the probability of loss. Hazard is the probability of occurrence, and vulnerability is the degree of loss. So risk ultimately translates into probability of loss. Okay. So next it says this vulnerability is reflected in the exposure sensitivity and adaptive capacity of the local population. So when this statement you are making, it makes a sense that when somebody is saying that people in Assam are vulnerable, then automatically somebody may question, how do you know that vulnerable or what level of vulnerability exists? Then this statement says that this vulnerability can be seen in the exposure. So exposure, as I have said before, or we have discussed in our previous class, is how far the elements which are at risk are exposed to the hazardous condition. That means if you're talking about the flood, what is the water level? Or if you're talking about hurricane or cyclone, what kind of a wind speed that is normally experienced in this valley? Okay, so in this statement he says this vulnerability is reflected in the exposure. That means we see that the elements at risk are highly exposed to the hazardous conditions. Then sensitivity. So sensitivity is a measure of how reflexive or how sensitive somebody is to the hazard. For example, if I am talking about sensitivity in other terms, some people sometimes they cannot eat or sometimes they cannot drink certain food. So people maybe sometimes they are allergic to, uh, in case some sort of food, may it be an egg or may it be milk, it may be a peanut, or it may be sometimes some fish or meat. So if we are considering two people or two persons, and then we are offering them the same sort of food, then some people with a level of sensitivity to a particular food will become more vulnerable to the effects or the adverse effects that the food may cause to his system. So, in similar terms, you can say that the people of Assam are sometimes sensitive to a hazard which maybe we can name it as floods, or we can name it as cyclones, or we can name it as even earthquakes. Why? Because we are normally not accustomed to this kind of a hazard. So, if you are making a statement like this, in that case, you have to think twice that what may be these hazardous events which make the people of Assam more sensitive. If I am talking about a hazard, if you think about the hazard of drought, because drought is a slow onsetting hazard. So, normally in our recent history, Assamese or the agricultural systems that we practice here are not really exposed to a drought situation. But because of climate change, uh, even in Assam, there are places where drought is becoming a normal sort of an incident. So if the farmers they are not really accustomed to how to cope with this situation or how to really adapt to this changing climate, they are at a higher degree of sensitivity to the particular hazard. For example, if there is a flood that comes in Rajasthan, so people there, they are normally they have no knowledge how to deal with this. Rather, if you compare a set of people who experiences flood at a regular basis. So, in a comparative study, the people in Rajasthan will become more sensitive to the same sort of hazard. So, in this statement, he is making that it is reflected in the exposure, sensitivity, and adaptive capacity of the local population to climate induced extreme events such as floods. So, here he is very specific. He is saying that I'm talking only about the floods. And what is the adaptive capacity in that case? Okay, so in normal terms, when there is a hazard, if there is a flood in the river, as long as the flood is not touching my life or the social activities that I perform, my livelihood in an adverse way, it is not a disaster. Do you remember? And the moment the flood waters touches my lives in an adverse way, it becomes a disaster from that point of time. So it says, whenever there is a disaster, the flood waters will come, they will hit my paddy, they will enter my house, and then after some time or some days, they will go. So we are focusing on two terms. One is known as the cope, the other one is to adapt. So during this short period of time when the flood is really entering my house and I am experiencing the problem of floods directly, uh, till the moment the flood water is gone out of my house, I will only be concerned how to survive the situation. No other thoughts will come into my mind. That includes no other future thoughts. How to deal with the floods after 3 years, how to deal with the floods maybe after 5 years. So the short-term planning or the short-term interests of the victims to really deal these floods or deal the disaster till the moment the disaster leaves the area is actually coined by the word known as the cope. So my interest will be how to cope with the problem of floods the moment it hits me immediately and then until it leaves. Then what is adapt? So there is a slight difference between these two words. One is known as the coping capacity, other one is the adaptive capacity. So the adaptive capacity on the other hand, it refers to my ability to really plan for the future after the flood waters have receded. That means when the flood leaves my home, how I plan for the next flood so that in a way I can mitigate the adverse effects of the flood. So in comparison, where coping is a short-term activity, adaptive capacity is normally implied to a longer-term planning. There is another difference, as you know, that now in the world there are two sets of schools. One is the people who are managing the disasters, and the other people, or the other half, are the people who are known as the climate experts. Because disasters you cannot really separate from the climate change issues. So if your disaster is somehow linked to the climate change or the climate change related variables, in that case we coin the term known as adaptive capacity. But if the flood is somehow not due to climate change issues, but due to, suppose, the sudden burst of a dam, in that case, we prefer to use the word coping capacity. So do you understand the difference now? Whenever there is a climate change related disaster, when you want to coin it in terms of the capacity of the people, we should be, or normally nowadays, people refer to your adaptive capacity, not the coping capacity. So it says this vulnerability is reflected in exposure, sensitivity, and adaptive capacity of the local population to climate induced extreme events. So, what are the examples of extreme events? Extreme events, if you just refresh my first lecture or maybe some of the earlier lectures, whenever we define the term known as hazard, I said that the hazard can be measured. We can measure hazard in terms of the magnitude, or on the other way, this magnitude may be measured in terms of the return period. So if my return period is really huge, there is a very small chance that this hazard will uh, really occur. So these extreme events refer to the hazards which have a very, very, very high magnitude. Okay? For example, in terms of floods, I can say I can say that this hazard, if it is a hazard of return period of maybe 1000 years, that is a really big or extreme event. Okay, so here I am going to close it because we are anyway shutting down for the time, and then let us meet for the next class. I am going to share my link soon with you. Okay, so do you have any question till now? Anybody? Do you have a question? Huh? Rashna, are you there? Zafar, Bimal Chand, are there?
Yes, sir.
So any questions?
No, sir.
Everything is crystal clear? That's good. Okay. So let us wait for the next class. Maybe around 10:30, 10:30 around that time. Okay. This is going to close down soon. Okay.